Oh, this is like bad, right? Like it's like really bad.
The US is a pretty rich country as far as countries go. While some people are apparently doing fine, most people I know seem pretty worried about money. 6 out of 10 people say they don't even have enough saved to cover a
$500 saved. That's most people don't even have $500 saved. Well, I'm sure this will end well.
$500 emergency. So
we need to have a new civil war so we can kill half the people in the country, and then we can redistribute the wealth among the people that are still alive. Because, like, this just can't keep going on. We got to have, like, a civil war, another COVID thing. Like, this, yeah, we got to figure something else about this. Yeah, no, I'm thinking maybe civil war, right? I mean, what do y'all think? A plague? It'll come soon? Yeah, it's got to be something, right?
Is all this money? Is there a chart to help us find it? You've probably seen one like this that shows the distribution of wealth in the US. If not, load up on antidepressants and watch this video from a while back. I made my own version of this chart with data from the 2019 Survey of Consumer Finances. It shows the population...
Oh, it's only 2019? It's probably twice as bad now.
...of the United States broken into 100 groups sorted by net worth. Each of these groups is 1% of the population, or about 3.3 million people. Over here is their net worth, which is a bit of a tricky number, but it's...
My favorite part about this is how the poorest people have negative money. Like, it actually goes into the negatives.
Basically how much you would have after you sold everything you own, like stocks, houses, and cars, and used it to pay back what you owe to banks, credit cards, and everyone else. So yeah, this is the chart that shows that most of the nation's wealth is held by only 1% of the population, while the other 99% clip coupons.
See, it's like you think about the top 1%. We're back? Sorry about... I don't know what that was. It's because I said civil war? Yeah, something like that, right? Let me go back. We keep it up. Sorry about that, guys.
Population, while the other 99% clip coupons and try to make money on eBay. This is why you hear people talking about the 1% and the 99%. My problem with this chart isn't that it inspires outrage in a nihilistic sense that fate is a cruel jester laughing as we toil fruitlessly to inflate the power of an exploitative ruling class that seems hell-bent on leading us down the path of endless conflict and eventual extinction. My problem is that the number used to represent the 99th percent is a median net worth, which means half the people in here have more money than this number and the other half have less money. For every other group, you can tell when the number maxes out because if it gets too high, it gets sorted into the next group up. This last 1%, though, we don't really know the highest net worth because there is no next group up. You might have heard people say, it's actually not the 1% who hold all the wealth, more like 0.01%. So let's do some advanced data research to see if we can add some detail to this last column.
Okay. Sorry, it's looking at like all the like billionaires.
Let's take a look at our new chart to see where all this American abundance is hiding. Well, it sure isn't here in the lowest 50%. That's only 3% of the wealth. This section represents 166 million people, with net worths ranging from $100,000 in debt up to a fairly comfortable lifestyle of $121,000. These feel like most of the people I come across. When we zoom out to 90% of the population, you start to spot a few millionaires. This slope here feels like what you might expect from a free market economy where amassing money becomes exponentially easier when you have more of it to invest. Maybe some of these people are greedy. While
it's easier to make money when you have money. Everybody knows that.
People are down on their luck or, being lazy, waiting for government handouts, or maybe they just don't have that can-do spirit or a winner's mindset. But who cares? We're still only seeing 32% of the nation's wealth. When you add in the next 9%, the slope gets even more drastic as we try to fit people with up to $11 million onto this axis. This curve is still what you might expect from an economy that has wealth being passed down through generations and accumulating in the same hands over time, with maybe a history of policies that restrict poor and or non-white people from acquiring property. But this is only 69% of the wealth. Let's include everyone except the richest 0.1% of the population. Well, now this is just kind of screwing everything up.
Damn.
The scale has to reach up to $51 million, which means 98% of the people don't even make it to the first line on the grid.
I would expect that.
If we're being accurate, these people shouldn't even be visible at this scale. Not sure
probably
if this
not.
is a glitch, but I'm going to go ahead and leave this 1 pixel line here just to remind people we exist. So here we've got 99.9% of the population, but the chart is still short by 13%. Normally I'd let that slide, but it's more than quadruple the amount held by half the country. Up till now, we've been using the same old medians in the lower brackets, but now that we've got more data for the 99th percentile, let's see what happens when we include
super whales. Isn't it crazy how gacha games function the exact same way as wealth inequality in the U.S.? That's crazy.
At this all-encompassing
What are
scale,
the
the
odds?
visible slope symbolizing the steep but climbable path from rags to riches is now gone, replaced by a meaningless void. Is our chart so broken that it's showing nothing of interest, or is it actually telling the whole story of American affluence, and it's so bleak that it's better to just ignore it? If we're searching for the last 13% of American wealth, it must be somewhere in this line.
Yeah.
It's just as empty and meaningless as before, even for the top.
Look at this, is
99.94,
99.95.
Even register on the scale.
Holy
Since
shit.
the scale is now in billions of dollars, let's take a look at the billionaires. Now we're only looking at 720 people. This isn't the 1% or the 0.01%. This is 0.2/10,000%, holding more wealth than half the country combined. The one nice thing, though, is that we can fit everyone on my chart. Did you know one person represents 0.310% of the population? We can even see who they are.
Wow.
What's weird to me is that the wealth disparity just keeps going. How do we explain it now? Are these people more industrious than these people down here? Is George Soros a victim of his own conspiracy to keep himself down? Is Oprah just being lazy and waiting for government handouts? Is LeBron James lacking that winning mindset? Maybe life isn't exactly unfair to the billionaire class, but this 4% of wealth is not distributed evenly. Half of it is in the hands of the top 100, and half of that is in the hands of the top 10. Only here do you start to see anything resembling a plateau. Is $100 billion the amount at which you can finally be rich enough? Or is it that there's no more wealth to be drained from the population because their capacity to build crap and buy other crap is maxed out? This chart isn't just about finance and economics. Money is power, influence, and freedom. Maybe I'm missing something, but this doesn't feel like the chart of a democracy where everyone has open access to opportunity. On the other hand, I'm starting to wonder if this situation...
I actually don't think this is a problem. I think what the problem is the fact that the people that are at the bottom of the chart can't live a normal life. And I think that they would even agree with that. I think that if the people at the bottom of the chart didn't have to worry about, like, being able to pay for healthcare, they wouldn't really care about the fact that Elon Musk has, like, $100 billion. It wouldn't really matter because they're not thinking about him because they're content and they have their needs met. So it's like, I think that it's getting pushed so far because, like, I don't think it's really a bad thing that people can make a lot of money. But the real problem isn't that people can make a lot of money. It's that other people don't have any money.
Is about more than people being too needy or too greedy or too much government or not enough government. Who's got a red hat? Who's got a blue hat? There are obviously things we're doing that make the curve steeper than it needs to be, and things we could be doing to make it less severe. But this kind of...
Somebody says, why do you need more than 10 billion? People don't have $10 billion. This is a misconception from people that are, like, kind of financially illiterate. They don't have $10 billion. It's not like there's a bank account with, like, there's a bank with a vault that has $10 billion of, like, $20 bills in it. This is all theoretical stock value that's attached to a company. The money is theoretical.
Continuously recurring pattern is starting to feel familiar. This has the markings of something even harder to understand than human behavior. It kind of looks like math. My old friend from high school who keeps showing up at every party I go to, not because he's invited, but because it turns out he's the one throwing it. We'll dive into that next time. In the meantime, go check out what we're doing at Commingle. You might find it interesting.
Yeah, I think the real problem isn't the fact that you have really rich people, it's that you have really poor people. Because, like, if people didn't have that problem, they wouldn't be, like, malding out and, like, getting mad at the rich people. Because they would be busy just doing their own thing and not worrying about it or anything like that. This is a small channel. Make sure to give it a like. Yeah, there it is. We're successful. We're debt-free. We don't everything. Oh, the Arizona tea. Why rich people don't help poor people? Well, I think that rich people oftentimes do help poor people, right? Because, like, if you're rich, let's say, you're probably providing jobs to those people, and you probably do help some people. And also, it's not their job to do that. You can't expect anybody to go out of their way to do anything for anybody other than themselves. If you rely on people's individual charity, you're totally making a mistake, and you'll never have those people do anything for that. I expect a lot. Yeah, you shouldn't. Like, most people are selfish, and also, like, people that are in the middle probably aren't doing a lot of things for the people that are at the bottom either. Most people aren't going to be doing anything because they only care about themselves and their own lives. That's just the way the world is. So, but if plenty of rich people help, it's the most that have most money, have invested in assets. Yeah, a lot of wealth is not like dollar bills. It's like assets and, you know, like stocks and stuff like that. So a lot of people get that wrong, but in general, I think it's a very big misconception. I went from foster care to Yale. This is why I learned about my luxury beliefs. Oh, I can think of a lot of luxury beliefs.
College protesters have finally gone home for the summer.
What a surprise.
And they've left a lasting mark on history. Their legacy? A destructive trend in social justice activism. It goes far beyond college campuses. It's self-centered, it's manipulative, and it's terrible for America. I call them luxury beliefs.
I already agree with everything he's going to say. I think he's completely right.
I'm the rare PhD who grew up carrying everything I owned in a trash bag starting when I was 3. I lived in 10 foster homes before I joined the Air Force. Then I went to Yale on the GI Bill and on to Cambridge. Along the way, I came up with the term luxury beliefs. They're ideas held by privileged people that make them look good, but actually harm the marginalized.
This is like, for example, victim blaming. Remember whenever I was talking about how like kids shouldn't be on social media? And it like, again, it helps, it helps people look good because it doesn't sound good to say that because it's like, oh, well, why don't you just blame the people that are doing it? But like, yeah, this is what people do. People care more about the optics of an argument than what the argument is. They care more about looking good than doing good.
It's like virtue signaling, with consequences.
Defund the police.
Why should we defund the police?
Take defund the police. Classic luxury belief. That cause was
absolutely a luxury belief. No normal person thinks this. The only people that think this are retards.
Most supported by the wealthiest Americans.
Yeah.
It was least supported by poor Americans who are at least twice as likely to be victims of violent crime compared to the middle class.
Yeah.
Where I grew up, we were lucky there were police to call. Next up, decriminalizing drugs. That's another luxury belief.
All drugs should be decriminalized.
I want to decriminalize drug possession for personal use, and here's why.
Should crystal meth be legal?
Uh-oh.
The answer is yes.
That movement has been most supported by well-educated Americans. Less so by those without a college degree, who are more likely to experience the downsides of the drug trade. My mom,
I'll be honest,
once tied me to a chair with a belt while she got high. And it's not just me. Since 2000, the number of foster kids has doubled due to parental drug use. Luxury beliefs are all over the place. Get rid of the SAT?
4 hours.
SAT, get the fuck out of here. Getting rid of that. Drugs are human made, weed's not a drug. I mean, I don't know. You could say that with a lot of stuff. I am of the mindset, like, if somebody wants to do drugs, they can. I think dealing drugs should be, like, you should arrest dealers, not the people that are addicted to them, because the people that are addicted to them are, like, victims. So, I disagree with that one, but, like, there's some nuance to it, and I see what he's saying, right?
Of my life down the drain.
SAT scores help underprivileged kids get into college. Reject marriage?
Well, SAT is obviously something that indicates whether you're intelligent or not. This is like it's like a stupid person cope. It's like, I don't do well on any testing, and I can't explain my knowledge, which is why I'm smart. Right. Right, for sure, man.
I find marriage completely pointless.
For poor kids, one of the strongest predictors of success is having married parents.
Yeah.
As a kid, I would have done anything to have had 2 stable parents. There are 3 golden rules of luxury beliefs.
Number 1, the person never has to experience the consequences of the outcomes. Oh, the victim, right.
Did you notice campus protesters acting like refugees?
Good point.
Luxury beliefs help many elites feel like they deserve what they have. After all...
Yeah, exactly. That's what I'm saying, right? I'm so glad that he fucking said that. Almost all of it is narcissistic entitlement to justify that they already have things. Like, that's what it's all about. If you look at why somebody holds certain beliefs, and you stop thinking about them as principles, and you start thinking about them as coping mechanisms, most of people's beliefs make more sense.
Today's progressive activists are twice as likely than average to make over $100,000 a year.
I wonder why. Yep.
By the looks of it, you would think these protesters were facing serious consequences.
This morning, police say at least 45 pro-Palestinian protesters were arrested at Yale University. Police say they were later released.
But the stakes are pretty low when you're released with no major penalties.
Deliver right here to the right.
And also the worst thing is that sometimes these people goad other people that are underprivileged into doing this, and then the underprivileged people get fucked over because they don't have the apparatus to keep them out of getting in trouble, right? So like, let's say somebody does catch a charge for this. Okay, that's fine, right? But like, it's okay because your dad owns a company and you can just work there for a few years, right? But like, if you are an actual like lower class person and you get hoodwinked into believing this, you could actually fuck your entire life off.
The part that bothers me the most, when the privileged claim to fight for the underdog, but actually hurt them instead. Remember when an heir and his fellow vigilantes faced off with a janitor at Columbia? That was luxury beliefs in action.
Yeah, bullying the janitor, that's definitely, that's what the freedom fighters would have done. Yeah.
Privileged men wrestling a blue-collar worker.
Yeah.
All in the name of the marginalized.
It's just...
Yeah, no, and again, like, the reason why this stuff happens is because these people want to feel like they are good people. And I think it actually comes from a place of guilt. And I'll explain why. These are people who live in a tremendous position of privilege. They live in a privilege that is unfathomable in any other time in human history. And I think that they realize that, and they know that subconsciously, so they look for ways to like victimize themselves so they can feel like they're they're actually victims. What do you think? Do I think that it's a coincidence that all of the women who are talking about, all of the people are women who are talking about defund the police? Let's defund the police, defund the police. It's all women who are living in nice houses in first world countries. I'm sorry, but if you are a woman living in a nice house in a first world country, you are privileged as fuck. And the reason why is because of the police. The moment the police are gone, people would just come and take your shit. And that's it. I live in a rich town that's insane. Yeah, exactly. And so like what these women are doing, right, is they're putting this out there so they can present themselves as victims, right? Because of this internalized sense of guilt. And so they're trying to like almost right the wrongs of like this guilt that they perceive. White women tend to be the most privileged. I mean, undoubtedly, right? I mean, obviously, like if like being the dominant race in an area is a benefit. It is. Like if you're in a black area and you're black, that's a benefit, right? If you're in Mexico and you're Mexican or Hispanic, that's a benefit. If you're in China and you're Chinese, that's a benefit. That's the way it goes. There's nothing that's like, it's not intrinsic about being white particularly. It's about being part of the dominant group.
Scary just thinking that you're locked in with a bunch of crazies.
It's home turf buff. Yeah, exactly.
Not all protesters are super privileged.
I repeatedly said that my family has been killed, and that is why I'm here.
Right.
And as I was saying that through the megaphone, police officers snatched the megaphone out from my hand and threw it behind them.
And it's great that people with privilege care about injustice, but too many of these people don't know what they're protesting.
They don't care about injustice. They care about conspicuously displaying that they care about injustice. And it is a bad thing, by the way, because I view it the same as like whenever companies try to push like social agendas. Whenever a company tries to push a social agenda, it pollutes that social agenda and it makes it worse and weaker because of the fact that it's a it's like now it's tainted with like this company's brand, right? These people will never actually take risks or do things that will be unadvantageous towards themselves, right? This is why a lot of feminists are not pushing for adding women to registering for the draft. Because there's always going to be a reason why the people that are pushing for this should maintain their privilege and other people that are besides them should give theirs away.
These white, woke,
pampered children from wealthy families. There's a complete ignorance about the complexities of this issue.
Luxury belief activists turn causes into props that transfer attention to where students really want it.
Yeah, it's all about,
themselves.
Yep.
Do you want students to die of dehydration and starvation?
Get out.
This is like basic humanitarian aid we're asking for. Like, could people please have a glass of
So
water?
simple. And this is what they think they are. And I think this is like, I think that there is like a core human condition that people want to rage against the machine. They want to fight against something that's like unfair. And the reality is that society now is pretty fair in a lot of cases. Like, things are really good now. Are there inaccuracies and inequalities? Yeah, for sure. But like, those inequalities are like a microcosm compared to what they used to be. It's not even like remotely comparable. So these people act like they are because, again, the internal guilt. Yep.
Here's what protests look like without luxury beliefs.
Yep.
The protesters of the 60s had more skin in the game, yet almost always practiced nonviolence.
Of course.
Sure, no movement has been perfect. But today's students oversimplify complex geopolitical issues into narratives of good versus evil, while
because they're the good ones. What a surprise. Duh.
Destroying property and harassing people along the way. So, how should they protest? Amplify the stories of everyone except yourself. Amplify the stories of victims. And if taking a stand means you don't get a degree or a job, don't protest the consequences. Accept them. Instead, when Savior Theater is done for the day, campus protesters have the best luxury of all: someone else cleaning up the mess.
A quiet and mostly empty UCLA campus except for cleanup crews after the pre-dawn crackdown.
Yeah, these are the actual people that are unprivileged. He's completely right about everything he said, by the way. Like, I completely agree with everything. Like, the people that do this, wow, such glitterers? Yeah, exactly. Why do you think this only happens in Western countries and not Singapore, South Korea, etc.? The reason why it happens primarily in Western countries is because I think there's a lot of reasons. It's a good video. Yeah, this is a great video. Give it a like. This is amazing. I love videos like this. As soon as I can find it, give me a second. Yeah, there it is. I think there's like 5 or 6 different reasons. I think one reason, obviously, is that we have a lot of freedom over here to protest, and a lot of other countries in the world genuinely don't have freedom of speech. Like, for example, Russia doesn't have freedom of speech. China doesn't have freedom of speech. Singapore, I can't speak to Singapore. I don't really know. South Korea, I don't know if they have it, right? In the same way that we do, right? A lot of people have a degree of freedom of speech, but the degree that America has is extremely high, higher than pretty much anywhere else in the world. So that's one reason. I also think that there's like a cultural, like a religious reason. I think that, for example, like in America and in a lot of Western culture, the predominant religion is Christianity, right? And that is what shades all of our government. That's what shades everything, right? That's what everybody's thinking about. It's like based off the 10 Commandments, etc. And I think that Christianity has like a unique, like, degree of guilt attached to it. And with like original sin and people being evil, etc. So I think that like even in like the core DNA, you have a tremendous amount of like learned and like a sense of like I don't even really know, like I haven't really thought about this a lot, so I don't really have a good way to say it. But I think that basically like a Christian culture promotes people to feel more like victims and to victimize themselves more, because that's part of the way that their religion works. So yeah, it's like Christians are self-hating. Well, I don't think they're self-hating necessarily, but there is a huge component to that. So like there's that, and then there's also the programmed guilt. Like, for example, Singapore and South Korea are pretty much like all Singaporeans and all South Koreans, right? So they don't have the same type of like racial politics that we do. So like for us, right, like we had slavery, and slavery was a long time ago, right? It was like over 150 years ago, but it was not that long ago. Like Cap, is Singapore is pretty diverse? Okay, maybe I'm wrong about that. Sure, South Korea then. Yeah, I mean the person just gave a couple of different examples, so like there's really that. I don't want to argue about that. I really don't know. I just assumed. But anyway, the point is that with a lot of this stuff, people don't do this type of thing to feed their ego. I think also the need to be virtuous becomes stronger inside of America because we also have more class consciousness. And I know South Korea has a lot of this now, and Asian countries are starting to adopt it. But I think that the need to virtue signal is correlated with class consciousness, because if people know that they have a privileged position, they know that they have to act like they don't. So if you're constantly thinking about the position that you're in and the world that you live in and like your place in it, you're always thinking about trying to like rationalize that inside of the world. So in other countries that don't have such a focus on that and such a big emphasis on it, you don't need to. Basically, I think virtue signaling is an outcome of guilt and attention seeking. And I think that the guilt is in our society at like a fundamental level, and the attention seeking is all over the world, right? But it's in America the most. So like that those are some of the reasons, right? I honestly, like, I probably would have to think about that for hours to like give you a better answer. But that's my best, like, kind of rudimentary answer. That's some of the reasons. It's worse in China. Yeah, I don't know what it's like in China. I've never been in China. But I completely agree with everything this guy's saying. He's completely fucking right. Yeah, absolutely. Emotionally abusive, I grew up poor, abusive drug parents, and want money, better than empathy not. The only problem is when they don't mean it. Where are the citations, sources for stats? I mean, like, I wonder, right? What's this here? Frames these topics as a dichotomy where one side has to hate the other side. I think that both sides should hate people that are LARPing as being part of their side. They should both hate LARPers. Are consequences for talking shit about people worse than no consequences? Freedom of speech, and everyone's responsible for what they say. Yeah, I do think that having consequences for talking shit about people is bad. In general, you should be able to express yourself in a way that's non-defamatory and it doesn't damage somebody, right? So, like, in general, I think that more freedom of speech is almost always better in a public space. Now, if you are in, like, a, it's like for a stream, right? Like, I think I should be able to ban anybody I want. I believe in personal censorship, right? And what I mean by that is that if you don't want to see something, you should never be made to see it. But I also don't think that you should make anybody else see what you want to see. That's the difference, right? What's this? I already saw that already. I looked at all the rest of these. Holy fuck. Yeah, I went through pretty much every single one of these. I'm going to scroll down and just make sure I didn't miss anything else. But it looks like I haven't. All right, we are good to go. Oh, my God. A lot of people don't know what the difference between criticism and just talking shit is. Well, it also depends. Like, it's disingenuous regarding historical protests and blatantly whenever showing MLK Jr., which is obvious if you read his own words from himself. I feel like MLK was a, pretty big advocate for nonviolence. I feel like that was a big reason why it was successful. And it was also successful because it was directly protesting the things that they were criticizing. So, like, for example, like, if you're protesting a war and then you do something separate, like, for example, like, you're protesting a war by burning down a store, there's, like, a disconnect there, right? It's like you're not really protesting this issue. You're hurting somebody else in order to bring attention to the issue. Like, these are two different things. And so with a lot of the protests that happened that became violent, they were direct protests on the actual things that they were against, which is totally different. He wasn't. Yeah, I mean, of course, right? He constantly excused the riots at the time. Yeah, and then he also condemned other things, right? It's not really very simple. But what I'm saying is that what is simple is that a lot of the people that go out and do this are not doing it for anybody else other than themselves. And why are they doing it? It's simply because they want to, what do you call it? They want to go and justify their own life and behavior. Destroying art and museums to protest oil? Yeah, exactly, right? Like, you're protesting two separate things. Like, for example, if somebody went and they threw paint on, like, the Exxon building, I feel like that protest would be seen more positively than if somebody is just like complaining about some random place. And I think that's really where the difference is.